We start the podcast with the good life and the fully functioning person. I think it's one of those interesting terms that we hear certainly as students, and I found myself talking about when I was a lecturer. But what does it actually mean? What is a fully functional person? How does that kind of move into practice? What does it look like? Well, I think to understand it, we need to think about where the term came from. And it was a series of essays written by Carl Rogers in 1961 that was formed the basis of his book, or part of the basis of his book, on becoming a person, a therapist's view. And I think that's really, really important because it's how we, as therapists, or how therapists may view someone who has had exceptional outcomes in therapy. And a fully functioning person is effectively somebody who has what he described as a good life. And I guess in that idea of a good life, the good life is that life isn't perfect, but we meet life on life's terms, and we're better able to navigate the peaks and troughs of existence by trusting in our own view of the world and our own internal locus of evaluation. Another piece of theory that we'll talk about at some stage, but that is the ideal situation. But crucially, and I think for me this is the crucial part, it's a direction of process. It's a journey, not a destination. So nobody's going to have a good life all the time. There are going to be troughs and peaks and disappointments and losses. However, what we can say is that the fully functioning person is better able to navigate them, Ken.
Oh, yes. I love how you've described that. I think it's a beautiful description of that theory. Comes from Carl Ransom Rogers. There is a handout on this as well. We'll give you the link to that in a moment. So it's worth downloading it and you can kind of read over it and have the theory to hand. That fully functioning person, I think it forms quite a large part of Rogers's work. It's kind of, if you look at the 7 stages of process, he kind of indicates that a person might start off with a very narrow view and all problems are everyone else's fault. It's the world's fault. The world is against me. It's them against me. Whereas when we're working through those 7 stages of process, eventually there is an acceptance that you have responsibility within your own life. Life is not personally against you. Other people will hold their own opinions, and that's okay. And that is towards a more fully functioning person, where the theory states that you would be happier with life. So you would be better able to function fully within your life. And it doesn't mean your life changes that much. It doesn't mean the way life comes at you changes. In other words, bad things will still happen. You'll still get bills that are still excited over the price that you expect them to be. People will still let you down. Things will still go wrong. But as a fully functioning person, you will be able to take that and view it as part of life, not as something personally directed against you. And that you will have more, I guess, I don't want to say control over your emotions, but it will sway your emotions less. You will be okay within the storm, we put it that way, as a fully functioning person. And I guess if you look at, I don't know what the opposite of a fully functioning person would be, Rory. A less fully functioning person I'm going to use now. Don't quote that in your assignments. But I'm just going to use it as an example. So we're talking about theory to practice. So what might we see if a person is less fully functioning as a person? Well, they might project negativity in the therapy room. They might speak about all the problems of being external to them and these people that are against them and life is against them. And there would be kind of a view of negativity and pointing outwardly. That is what we might identify if someone is less fully functioning, as Carl Rogers terms it. A more fully functioning person would look maybe with through a frame of gratitude at life. Even when times are tough, they might say, well, at least I still have, and it's like this, and it's okay, and it's fine, and I'm able to manage. And yes, it's tough, but I'm going to get through it. And that's kind of what I would look out for. And I guess if I've got somebody that is presenting as a more fully functioning person, Rory, within my session, that theory in practice might indicate that they're coming to the end of their time with me.
Yes, I mean, I think you beautifully outlined that, Ken, and I think that there's three really strong themes that Rogers identifies, and one is increasing openness to experience, where you might have someone who's in the therapy room and says, "I can't do that, I can't do that," and effectively, what's happening is psychologically they're building their own emotional prison, they're building the walls, they're being their own jailer, and by opening up and opening that door and going out in the world and having different experiences and being open and less defensive, that is a sign of a fully functioning person. Not every experience we'll have will be a positive one, but at least the motivation to gain experiences and to try different things, I think, is really important. Rogers used the term called increasingly existential living, and I would frame that as relinquishing control of things, not believing you've got to be in control of everything. Some aspects of control are really good, specifically if you're driving a vehicle, I would imagine, but not wanting to control every aspect of your life, allowing life to flow, just going with the flow, I think is that. And also trusting your own judgment. When you're making a decision about something, or when a person is making a decision, whose voice is making that decision? Is it your voice? Is it your voice from your own experience, or is it a voice maybe from your past, maybe a parental voice or a societal voice that's saying you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing that, maybe even a voice driven from a faith position? And I think the person who's more open to experience and a more fully functioning person will come from their own view of the world. They'll take other people's views, but they'll say, take other people's views, but actually this feels right. And I want to pick up on the point of feeling and thinking. I think that a lot of people believe that Rogers' ideas are all about feeling, but I think it's equally as valid to put thinking in there. Yes, to have a feeling about something, but to check it with a thought and saying, this is how I feel, but what's the evidence that would support that feeling? And that way, I think you're creating quite a good balance, Ken.
Mm. I think that you're right there, or I like it. It's interesting for me when we look at the theory and we kind of look at how that might present in practice, and then you start seeing the intertwined theories. So you speaking about whose voice is it, whose opinion is it that the client may be bringing, and of course we can look at this in our own lives as well as part of our self development, because as you've beautifully laid out, Rory, this is not a destination. It's not you wake up in the morning and you go, right, that's it. Now I'm a fully functioning person. What am I going to do next? It is a process. It's a way of living. It's a way of being, I guess, as Carl Rogers would mention. It's how you approach life and how you see life. And if we look to the other theories like introjected values, in other words, the values of others, and we've covered these in previous episodes where we've taken that and looked at how does that theory link into practice, those conditions of worth, where you're acting from an external locus of evaluation. It's other people. If they say you're okay, then you're okay. That is a less fully functioning person. The fully functioning person looks definitely externally for advice and guidance, and then measures it against own experience and makes a decision and is non-biased by that advice or guidance, as opposed to somebody that may go, oh, what do you think I should do? And that's the only option, the opinion that comes in from somebody else. A fully functioning person is open to the input from others, but then considers that and matches it against who they are, what their values are, what their experience are, and what they feel that they should do in that moment. And I guess it's an interesting one. In my own personal, I guess, self-care routine, part of that for me is meditation, just sitting, being quiet. And that I find helps me with the emotions that come up within the day. So you're speaking about the thinking, you speak about the emotions, and I think they're, for me, definitely intertwined, because I will have a thought. The thought will then trigger an emotion. That person doesn't like me, and then all of a sudden, hold on, now I've got an emotion that is coming up. So they're very much intertwined, not easy to separate. And I find that taking a little bit of time to be quiet in the mornings, my emotions are less turbulent, I guess. And I feel, for me, and this is just my opinion of my life, I feel that makes me a more fully functioning person. Not fully functioning, just more towards the fully functioning side.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how how we build that into our daily routines. For me, I think it's about engaging with things that work and things that don't work. When you're a fully functioning person, you're making your own decisions, and the only person you have to look to if those decisions don't play out or don't result in what you hope they would be is yourself. And I think on that reflection, when you're looking in that kind of emotional mirror, is to welcome both the positives and the negatives as part of that journey. Not everything that we will do in our lives will end up in a positive way, but we see them equally. We see that, when we do something that's worked very well in our lives, we go, that's great. When we see something that hasn't worked, we say, well, that's not so good. But what can I learn from that? And like you, Ken, I can spend a good half an hour to an hour with my mug of tea, peering out the studio window, looking at the clouds, reflecting on that. And I think that is an important point. We need, as human beings, time to process our experience. And I think there's no better way, as Ken said, of taking some time. Ken calls it meditation. I call it looking out the window with a cup of tea. I think probably both equally as valid and probably the same thing at the final analysis. But the fully functioning person is someone who's moving towards, they're not getting perfection. They're just moving along, doing the best they can and living and meeting life on life's terms.
I like it. I'm glad you brought this topic, Rory. And I wouldn't want to leave the topic without kind of pointing at and recognizing something that you've said again and again. And it's kind of been like a little beacon that's glowed up through this, in that being a more fully functioning person means taking responsibility for your life. Not looking to people, places, and things external to self and saying, I am as I am because of that. It's a responsibility. I'm saying, I am who I am because I am me. And yes, of course, we cannot ignore that we've all traveled a road. We have all traveled the road. But there's a lovely saying that I once heard: the wake of the boat does not push the boat forward. It's the propeller that pushes the boat forward. So standing just looking at the wake behind the boat and saying, oh, it's so bad because it was like that, there isn't responsibility in that. It's kind of a blame. It's a pointing out. And it's not to say that we don't have clients that travel a horrendous road. I mean, we go along those paths with them. But as we make our way to a more fully functioning person, the theory kind of suggests that we would integrate that into part of self. I look back on my own road, and it was dark and it was bumpy at times and it was really lonely and cold at times, very isolated at times. But I wouldn't rewrite a single word of it. If it was a novel and I was writing, I wouldn't rewrite it because I needed to travel that road to be who I am today. It is part of who I am. It is my responsibility to live my life on a day-to-day basis. And I guess when we see in clients, that the easy way is to point external to self. It's like this because of my job. It's like this because of the life I lead. If you had a partner like mine, then you would understand that it's like this. And it's not to say that the person is not going through difficulty and that we're not there with them through that difficulty, but it just is an indication, I guess, of the problems being externalized as opposed to the responsibility of being embraced of I hold the responsibility for this. I think it's a tricky one because we're speaking about that fully functioning person, and with it being a like you say, it's a direction we move in. I think when we're working with our clients, and even if they make a small movement in that direction of more fully functioning person, we can celebrate that with them. We can say, wow, I hear you saying, yes, my boss is shouty and he gives me a hard time every day, but I guess when I'm at work, that my mood is my responsibility. That's massive. That's huge that you've said that your mood is your responsibility. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even the day the same client comes in and says, I've quit my job.
Yes.
Yes, I've quit my job and I'm going to find a new job with and take control of my life. And it's not easy. And I think excuse me, part of a therapist's role is to support that uncomfortable transition from kind of having a lack of power to feeling empowered and using that, the client using that power, that personal power in their own lives.
So get the handout, Fully Functioning Person, Carl Rogers, and The Good Life. It's a lovely little handout. It's free of charge. Where do you get it? Well, you go to counselingtutor.com. That's our mother website. Click on the podcast tab. You'll find that at the very top menu, and make your way to episode 239. That's today's episode. Right there on that page, all the show notes from today's episodes with links out to things that Rory and I discuss. And from that very page, you can download that free handout and other free handouts that we have that are upcoming